What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing tons of Mighty Max shit. We've got all kinds of new parts, front suspension, thermostats, drive-by-wire throttle bodies, temp sending units, battery relocation mounts, new ignition, custom axle stuff, and I think that's it. All right, let's go. Running through this new parts pile real quick, we've got an oil filter housing adapter so that I can run an 1/8 inch NPT port. I got a new pressure and temp combo sensor for the oil pressure and oil temp. That should be sick. I'm gonna move the one I've got now that's pulling from the head and giving me inaccurate pressure readings down to the to this area, down off the block essentially. I'm gonna get a better pressure reading that way. I've got a new ignition assembly here. The alarm system in the truck sucks. It's an RFID setup. I just hate it. I'm gonna get rid of it. I got a new thermostat. We got a 160 in there. We're gonna go up to a 180. I've got some T-bolt clamps for some charge pipe changes that I made. I'll show you that. And then we've got some MBT ports, 1/8 inch. I need to throw a new one of these in the thermostat housing area, but this time before the thermostat. I got a battery mount here. This is going to get mounted underneath the back side of the truck. I have some remote terminals from an old project. Still got those laying around. T3 turbo flange. Over here is a pretty cool order. This stuff just came in. I've got a 456 gear as opposed to the current 373 gear that's in the truck that will, right now, with the current trends and tire size and stuff, allow the truck to go 223 miles an hour in 5th gear. That's very stupid. It makes it feel like a dog in 3rd gear. We're gonna run this 456 gear. It should change things massively, hopefully for the better. We got some housing. This is 3¼ inch OD, 1/4 inch wall, very expensive tubing. All this stuff came from Strange. This is to modify the Ford 8.8 that I've got right now. And then looking further, in this box here, I got some custom axle shafts. Now these shafts are meant to be used with the 8.8 housing, but they have 9-inch bearings on them. And then I've got the big Ford Torino style 9-inch ends. These are gonna get welded on to the axle tube, which will get welded onto my axle. In the process, we're gonna widen it so it actually matches that front track width. And long run, it'll be worth it because I'll be able to run a square wheel setup all the way around, or if I want a wider wheel in the back, I can widen the wheel inward and not have to change my offsets just to achieve this massive track width that I have due to the WiseFab stuff up front. It's the biggest problem I've had thus far. I really don't want to run a 13-inch wide wheel in the back every day. I certainly don't want to drift on a wheel that wide or in a tire that wide. So this is a solution for that. I'm really excited about that. Probably aren't going to get to it in this video, but the parts did come in. I wanted to show you guys that stuff. And moving over to the engine bay, you can see I've already started taking things apart. I've got it raised up just a hair on the lift so that this wheel can float in existence right there. Pulled that suspension off in favor of some new Feel 441 coilovers. These are the 441 pluses, so they got the Swift spring set up on them, and then they came with the WiseFab V2 top hats. Currently, the top adjuster hits my strut tower. So this is obviously not factory, and because of the way this plate is, the adjuster hits the underside right here. So my solution for it is to add a plate. This is water jet cut. It's massively thick, and then I shot it with some primer and some black epoxy. This is 5/8 thick, 0.625. And what this does is gives me an overall height when I include this Delrin spacer of 1 inch. And that gets the adjuster away from the shock tower just enough. This is really the only option that I have. I'm not gonna drill out or modify the shock tower at this time or ever. I don't wanna repaint any of that stuff. It's just not in the cards right now. So I added this and we'll see if it makes anything different. I don't think that it will, but you know, to be decided. But to give you a quick update of things that have changed under the hood before we start with this coilover installation, I recircled the gate. It's got a nice big long merge, had some fun with this stainless, did a vibrant flex section in there. And the main reason for this was I switched hoods, found an OEM hood that's used, it needs some body work, but at least it's OEM. This hood never fit properly, so it's just time to change it out, and I'm not gonna go to the trouble of recutting the wastegate hole this time around. Moving down here, I changed up a lot of stuff with the charge pipes and the throttle body. So I finally got the drive-by-wire assembly done. My friend Mike Laird was extremely helpful in getting this entire process completed. He's a lot better TIG welder than I am. I've gotten better with aluminum lately, but at the time especially, I was not adequate. And at this point, I still cannot weld like him. He's very experienced, and it really shows, but he killed it on this. He cut off the flange that was on here. It was an S90 before, if you don't remember. And we welded on a flat plate, and then we opened that one up and welded on the flange for the Bosch 74mm drive-by-wire throttle body. And then I used this billet adapter to allow me to run the Wiggins style clamp. If you remember, I had the Wiggins style ferrules all over the charge pipes, but I just have too many tight tolerances in this specific setup to run those things. And this one was always leaking. I could hear it. I've never actually been able to drive this thing without a boost leak. So now we got couplers set up everywhere. I welded on bead rolled ends throughout on the bottom side, and then I kept this up here because it looks nice and it still allows for plenty of movement. So I don't think we'll have any leaks there. And then on the inside of the truck, everything is torn down so that I could add my drive-by-wire pedal assembly. Now this pedal is pretty cool. It works well. It might be a little low or look low in this video. It works fine. It feels relatively comfortable, but I haven't driven it yet, so I may need to make some changes. Worst case scenario, because I can't mount this pedal any higher, I could A, change pedals, which I really don't want to do at this point, or 2, I could machine a billet arm or make a steel arm that positions the physical foot area slightly higher. So maybe from here, bring it up to about there. The TPS wires, which there were 4 total for the AEM Infinity setup, and then there were 3 idle air control wires, 7 wires total. This throttle body only needed 6 wires, so I was able to repin at the ECU, repin to this connector, which you can see right there, and I didn't have to change anything in my Raychem, mil-spec, whatever, wiring harness, which saved me a bunch of time, and obviously it's nice because I don't have to add a ton of extra stuff or a secondary harness. Now the throttle body process definitely took some time. I'm gonna cut to some clips right now that show that entire process of cutting the flange off, welding on the new one, powder coating it, so on and so forth, and then we'll come back to this. Fast forward through the drive, we're here in Greenville, and we've looked at a couple different options for how to do this. Obviously, the easiest, or what you think of first, is just weld the flange directly to this plate. But you can see that we have this overlap because the old throttle body was slightly smaller and the ID of the hole is a little bit smaller too. This is like 1/2-inch aluminum plate, so drilling it or grinding it or cutting it is gonna be fairly difficult. It's gonna take a little bit of time. We don't have a ton of time to get this done. So instead, we're gonna cut this flange completely off the manifold, and we're going to recap it and then weld this to that cap. So we got everything prepped, got it ready to weld the flange on, and then I went ahead and pressure washed or hosed out the inside just to get rid of any of those shavings that are gonna be a lot harder to get out once this thing is capped off. All right, so we got this thing all welded up. It came out really nice. I'm stoked. It would look a little bit cleaner. I'm sure many will think this if this flange and this flange were one piece. But I'm not gonna machine this plate out of one, like I said. It would be great, but this looks awesome. I'm stoked. And it's a lot better, I think, than welding it to the flange that was on there. So yeah, I'm gonna scuff this up real quick with the Scotch-Brite pad, and then we're gonna go shoot some powder on it and see how it works. Right now, I'm preheating the intake manifold. It's been here for about a minute. You can see she's floating in there. That just gets everything nice and warm so that the powder will stick better. And I'm gonna dust the whole manifold. And this is because I don't want to show the transition from the old powder. All right, guys, so here she is all torn down with the tape taken off. And I'm gonna get the throttle body thrown on, and I'm gonna mock it up in the bay and show you what that looks like. So now that you've seen that process, I hope it kind of puts it into perspective of the time that it took. It was super frustrating, and that's why I waited so long to cut this flange off and make that decision or take that plunge. But I'm really happy that I did. And then I actually had Carl Hernandez from Black Box Tuning log in remotely and help me calibrate all of the pedal settings. So the motor still needs to be tuned. Everything is still on a very rough base map. But at least the throttle body part of it is done, and hopefully we have a dyno day very soon, which is the reason I'm doing so many things right now. So first things first, we're gonna do the coilovers. So I got the passenger side bolted up. It looks awesome at first glance. So my little spacer works. You can see that little black block in there, and it lowered things down enough for that dampening adjuster to clear. And in comparison to what I had on here, which was never intended to be used forever or even for this long, this is a function form type 2. These are super cheap, like 600 bucks for the entire assembly. And the WiseFab FD or non-FD legal top hats, which now I don't need this stupid looking tab I've got out there, but that's not a big deal. But you can see the way I had to drill them out. I had to run big bolts on the edges. It just was less than ideal. And these struts are obviously not designed for any sort of real competition use or even competitive weekend fun. So I moved on to this corner. I'm gonna pull this off before I weld that MPT port, but I started pulling apart the intake assembly, so I got my charge pipe off. Got my stuff capped off. Got the intake manifold off. The MPT port is on the bottom of this, and that's what I need to change. It's on this side, which is a lot easier to fabricate because you can. This actually is threaded. You can spin it and remove it, and you can work on it, which is awesome. But like I said before, the water temp sensor should have been on the top side or pre-thermostat, so that you can see what your water temp is before the thermostat actually opens. I've got the thermostat housing loose. You can see how it spins on and off here. Oh, there it goes. Moving on to the next part. Here is the water temp sensor with the fresh NPT port on there. I try pretty hard to hide sensors. This one is a bit obvious, I guess. It's fuel pressure, but it's at least tapped into the rail rather than sticking out of the front of the regulator or something. I can't stand the way that looks. So I may have to just suck it up and put it here. You can see that that's a pretty accessible spot. So it's cooled down. I got it threaded in, got some tape on it. Fingers crossed it doesn't freaking leak. I really don't want to pull the motor, and I know that that's going to be what has to happen if I can't figure this out or get it to stop leaking. I also got to put this suspension on this side. Everything is finally buttoned up. I even put my T-bolt clamps on the charge pipe, so it's ready to fire up, except the suspension stuff is not done. So I'm going to finish this first. I'm going to fire it up and hope and pray that we don't have any issues with this water leaking everywhere. All right, I got the front end back installed. Everything is nice and tight. Set it down on the ground. Fired her up, and so far so good. I was able to get the thermostat to open. The post side line is hot, and so far, no apparent leaks. All right, so the leak stuff is sorted. There are no leaks. That's great. It's bled. Everything worked out well, and we can move on. So I've been talking about getting rid of my factory alarm for a while, and I showed you guys the switch I had and like the OEM ignition from a base model Lancer. So this is no longer installed. I have mocked up or installed and test wired the OEM style ignition here. Thankfully now we have a regular key in here, which is pretty awesome. When I turn it on, you can hear the pump prime, cluster lights up, and truck runs. So I'm gonna go ahead and wire the rest of this stuff up and move on to the next thing. I need to fix the front Hall effect sensor that I used for the front wheel speed. I've got 5 lug hubs from a 240, but I got the ABS option when I bought them so that I have this ring. And then I have a Hall effect sensor. I added a mount here onto the WiseFab knuckle. And then I recently broke the wiring harness when I changed out the front suspension. The knuckle dropped, wire got tugged on, and it broke. So got a nice little plug on there. I just use one of these adhesive pads, and I only have white. I know it looks disgusting. I too don't like it at all, but for right now it works. I can always pull this off later and swap it out. Probably never will. Next on my list is relocating the battery, or actually making a proper box for it. It's basically gonna sit like this, about that height, as low as I can get it. And so I went ahead and cut a tab here, drilled some holes. This will get cleaned up, but you know, angle grinder life is what it is. So this is gonna basically sit right here, form somewhat to the rail. Should be pretty smooth, and then it should, I say should with a lot of uncertainty, because I don't know for certain that I'll be able to get a battery in here like this. It'd be awesome if I could. I can't cut this side off to build like a trap door or whatever, because I need these to mount the little tie downs that hold the battery in. And the other reason for bolting this, because obviously it'd be much faster just to lean it in, tack it, and then move around and fully weld it. It's because I don't want to have to paint all this stuff separately, or on the truck rather, and tape stuff off. So if I bolt it in, I can remove it and I can go ahead and paint it that way. And then also I want to take this with me to get a new battery, because the battery I have is slightly too big. That on there with enough filler to hold it in place, and then I got my bolts holding it in. I ordered some riv nuts. For right now I have to use standard nuts, which is a bit tough to get those on, but for now it works. And then I mocked up my lower mount. You can see it's basically just like a little angled piece, and this is definitely going to be overbuilt, especially with the size of the plate that I'm using. But you know, if you ever seen that clip where the drift car comes around the corner and the battery box or the battery flies out and leaves the chat, I don't want that, so I might as well just build it strong and build it once. Tack the lower section on, I end up using a piece of angle and then just cut it short so it gives it a little more rigidity. Drill a couple holes there, put them through. Now there is some holes in the frame behind it, so hopefully I can get this looking somewhat uniform. Yeah, cool, it's welded out.
Whoever says you ain't worth it, ain't worth it. You here for a purpose, and your purpose ain't a person. Do it for yourself, show the world why you the coldest. You the best to ever do it, you the one and you should know it. Let those scars you have remind you.
All right, here it is. I trimmed off the top a little bit. Didn't need that extra stuff up there. The rods that hold the battery down, like the tie downs, run through any of these holes depending on how tall your battery height is. For me, it's probably gonna be this lower one here. And brackets look a little wild, but they should work fantastic. I still gotta drill the lower holes, but for sake of just finishing this and wrapping it up, one-handed, it's a lot harder. There you go, drop it down. There we go. Got 2 bolts in there, and I am stoked. So a lot more height than I thought I had, and plenty of room. You can see that red power terminal coming out right there. That's obviously going to get shortened, as it was very long to go to my tie-down battery that was once up top. But the lower bolt goes in no problem. There's no issues there. And then if you look at it from the side, you can see it's nice and even, uniform with this. There's going to be a side skirt here, so you won't exactly see that, and it's going to be painted black. But if anyone was to ever look under it, obviously you don't want it to be goofy looking or whatever. Wherever I can get bolts in it, I'll bolt that side in, and then I'll drill that out. and that's gonna get ribbon on it as well, so I gotta wait for those. But I'm also gonna stop this video here. It's been, I don't even know how long since a good stopping point, how many days I filmed consecutively, no idea. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all the support, and catch me on the next one. It's gonna be real soon because we got tons of more shit that I'm gonna go right into. Thank you, peace out.